Welcome to What the Camera Saw Part 4. We're ready to talk about the rest of the footage and what else the camera saw. There are a number of events captured on camera from the night of June 1st, 2008 that police either ignored or overlooked and that corroborate the account Gail gave them of a disturbance at her home that evening. So what else did the camera see? First of all, it saw a man walking on Gail's property near her house, Second, it caught lights both in and outside the home that corroborated Gail's account of a disturbance and her movements as she checked on that disturbance. And third, it captured vehicle lights consistent with the second person being dropped off at Gail's home prior to the alleged abduction. This evidence was corroborated by a neighbor's statement, as we shall see. And this is important because this is evidence that there were other unidentified persons in the area that night who could have been the person responsible for driving Gail's car away from the property. The camera also captured additional details in relation to Gail herself and her car leaving the property that deserve attention. So we're going to unpack all of this now. But first, there is one very important question that we must address, and that is who, if anyone, knew about the hidden camera? If we were police officers investigating this case, we would want to be asking this question. So first of all, did Gail know that there was a hidden camera overlooking her door? And the answer is no. Gail did not know about the camera on the night of June 1st, 2008. She had no idea that police had installed a covert camera overlooking her home, and because she had no idea that it was there, she would have no incentive to alter her behavior in response to the camera. Gail actually learned about the camera after she had been arrested. However, Gail consistently told police that she believed her assailant was a police radio, and she believed this because she could hear a police radio in the background when he was assaulting her, and also because he seemed to have inside knowledge of things that were happening at the police station. For example, she learned that her bail date was being changed through a note that he sent her at her house that she got from her assailant. She learned it from him before she heard from the police that her bail date had been changed. So she was always wondering, how does her assailant know what's going on at the police station? And the police knew that about Gail's complaints. So all of this evidence, this question about who maybe knew about the camera, is information that should have caused police to reevaluate the conclusion they drew about the driver footage, which we examined in the last video, but we will do that for them. So let's now get into what else the camera saw. So in this video, we're going to deal with the first of the 3 points. We're going to deal with the camera capturing the man on the driveway. So you will recall that Gail told police that she was upstairs in bed when a late night disturbance began and that she came downstairs 3 times to investigate. She said that her dogs first alerted her to a disturbance around 12:30 a.m. They started barking, and a motion sensor alarm covering her front patio started beeping, which indicated that someone had entered her front patio. Now, if you were an officer in receipt of that information and you were tasked with investigating a possible abduction and rape, what would you do? Well, you would most likely want to check out what the camera picked up at that time that Gail reported the disturbance and see if anything was going on, wouldn't you? So here's what the camera showed around 12:30 a.m. After the area had remained completely black for a period of time, it had been completely black for about an hour, some lights appeared that suggest a car has come down the lane. And the car lights up, you see the lights are moving, and then the lights, the shadows and lights stop moving because the car has paused long enough to drop a person off in front of the house. Next, you're going to see some unusual lights that suggest that a person is in the area shining a flashlight on the house. So there they are. Now, I'm going to stop the video and just describe what comes next because it happens very fast. A man meeting the description of Gail's assailant is going to appear when the counter at the top left of the screen reads 003538. So in other words, in about 3 seconds after I turn the video back on. He has his back to the camera, and you will only see his upper back and shoulders and the back of his head. He's only visible for about 3 seconds, so if you blink, you might miss him. He's going to enter the camera frame at the bottom between the right-hand side and the center of the screen, and he walks past the front of the car before exiting on the left-hand side. So I'm going to resume the video now. Keep your eye on the bottom of the screen there and don't blink, and recall that, he'll come on when the counter reads 003538. So here we go. There he goes, walking along. The stationary light that comes on after he passes indicates that he has triggered a nearby motion sensor light with his movement. So the camera picked up some incredible evidence corroborating Gail's account of a disturbance around 12:30 a.m., as well as her subsequent abduction and rape shortly thereafter. Seeing this footage for the first time made me wonder how the police responded to it. One would expect that they had ruled this man out as her assailant, given that they arrested her for false reporting. And how would they rule him out? Well, to answer that question, we need to make sure that we really understand where the man was walking. Okay, so let's pan out to this scene. Gail's house, and then you see her neighbors there. You will recall that the camera only picks up the upper 15 to 17 feet of Gail's long driveway, so the man caught on camera was right next to her car, and he was either heading towards the back of her house or to her neighbor's house. The red arrow indicates his trajectory as it was captured by the camera. So you can see that he's over 60 feet away from the road. He's not in this location by any sort of accident. He's clearly not walking along the road. He is on Gail's property within about 15 feet or less of her house. Here's a closer view of where the camera picked up the man, with his trajectory again marked with a red arrow. Also, because of the extremely hilly terrain around Gail's house, this man can only be going one of two places from the position where he is seen. And here's another photo showing the two houses next to each other. He is either walking towards the garage in the backyard of Gail's property, where there are places to hide, or he is going next door to the neighbor's house. His trajectory hits a dead end at the homes of Gail and her next door neighbor. There's simply nowhere else to go without reversing and walking back down 65 feet back down to the road. So these last two photos have shown you the man's trajectory as he leaves the camera view next to the car there. You can also see in this photo that the steepness and the amount of shrubbery make it nearly impossible to walk across the neighbor's front garden to the next house. So if he was going somewhere other than the next door neighbor's house, he would actually need to walk all the way back down to the road to get there. So this is not a place where any other neighbors would pass by on their way to their own homes. It is effectively a dead end. The jury never visited this site, so they might not have understood the significance of where this man was walking and the fact that his destination had to be either Gail's home or her next-door neighbor's. So, the way to rule out this man as Gail's assailant would have been to speak to the couple who live next door and see if the man is connected to that home in any way. Does he live next door? Is he a late-night visitor? If this man had any connection to the neighbor's home, police could easily have identified him, and they could have learned his name by speaking with the neighbors, and they could have questioned the man. So did they do that? No. That never happened. Police never questioned the neighbors about this man. They never ruled this man out as Gail's assailant. They failed to ever identify him or to rule him out as a suspect. So we've got a suspect on her property, and the police failed to ever identify him and rule him out. Now, the police did actually speak to the next door neighbor as part of a house-to-house inquiries process, but the problem with that is that the officers conducting the inquiry did not seem to realize that a man had been caught on camera that they needed to ask the next door neighbors about. So those officers spoke to the next door neighbor, and on their house-to-house inquiry form, and I've redacted the neighbors' names for their privacy, the officers note that the neighbor sleeps with the window open at the front of the house, and that the neighbor heard nothing except a taxi arriving around 12:35 a.m. No further details about the taxi are included. Again, the fact that a taxi arrived actually corroborates Gail's account, because that's when the disturbance happened. Now, those notes suggest that the neighbor was already in bed by 12:35 a.m. because he makes no mention of receiving any visitors at that late hour, and one would expect him to offer such information under circumstances such as this, where the police are inquiring about any late-night events. Now, the police house-to-house inquiries form also shows that the officers failed to capture the significance of what the neighbor shared, the significance of his statements that he was asleep or that he was already in bed. He sleeps with the window open at the front, and he didn't hear anything, implying that he had no visitors. Why was that significant? I'll explain why in a minute, but here's this other portion of the same house-to-house inquiries process or form where there's two questions the police have to answer. Did the neighbor supply relevant information, yes or no? And did they obtain a statement from the neighbor, yes or no? And in both cases, they have answered no. There's no relevant information from this neighbor. There's nothing of interest. So this means that the officers who completed this form did not understand the significance of what the next door neighbor had shared, how significant it was that he was in bed and did not have any visitors that night. Because that meant that the man caught on camera on Gail's property was indeed at her house for some purpose and not going to the neighbors. So this is a very significant finding. There is a man captured on camera meeting the description of Gail's stalker, and the police never managed to identify him and rule him out as someone visiting the neighbor. An experienced sex crimes investigator would therefore consider the possibility that this man was Gail's assailant and was in the vicinity of the house waiting for the right opportunity to strike. And here's what else such an investigator would have considered. The man's trajectory is leading to areas where it is easy to hide. To the side of Gail's garage, there is a recessed area in front of a storage shed where a person can remain unseen. In addition, neither Gail's home nor her neighbor's home has any windows on the side wall where the homes face each other, making it possible for a person to walk between the homes undetected. Now, Gail's storage shed, which is right behind the shrubbery you see there on the left, her storage shed blocks access to her back garden from the driveway, but access to her back garden was possible by walking up the side of the neighbor's house to the back and then jumping over a short fence. So the man caught on camera may have been doing either one of these things. He may have been hiding at the side of the garage in front of the storage shed, or he may have been walking up the neighbor's path along the side of their home to Gail's back garden. So our conclusion about this man. It's really incredible that police did not make it their priority. It's really incredible that police did not make it their priority to identify and question this man. And even more shocking that they charged Gail with false reporting without positively ruling him out as her assailant. Police should not bring charges against a victim of sexual assault unless they can prove that no crime was committed or attempted against him or her. In this case, a man walking on Gail's property about an hour prior to when she said she was abducted is powerful evidence corroborating her account. It's really senseless to bring false reporting charges against Gail when such compelling evidence corroborates her account. So this segment of CCTV footage provides conclusive evidence that an unwelcome and unidentified visitor was at the scene on the night that Gail reported that she was knocked unconscious, abducted, and raped. This person was never identified by police, and he was never excluded as Gail's assailant. So the camera saw a potential assailant, and our first significant finding is that the police either entirely missed this or ignored it.